Okay, we're going to interrupt that interview for a moment and now take you live to Edmonton, where, as you can see, the Premier of Alberta, the leader of the United Conservative Party, Danielle Smith, is about to deliver her keynote address at the party's annual general meeting. Let's listen in.
But we better be on time. Just right when last year's dress is just a little too tight. And anything I do is say that.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. My dear friends, thank you. I know we were a little bit delayed getting started today, but it was because we end up with, I think, 4,450 delegates here. Amazing. So, my dear friends, thank you so much for that warm welcome. I can't tell you how happy and energized I feel when I am with you. Let me tell you, battling leftists and the mainstream media and other anti-Alberta forces on a daily basis can be exhausting for me and for our entire caucus. And so to be here with you, to see your smiling faces and to hear your warm words of support and encouragement is just the fuel that I need and that all of our MLAs need to get back out there and keep on fighting. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for your incredible support, your volunteerism, and your prayers. We could not win this battle for Alberta without you. And winning the battle, my friends, is exactly what we're doing. Just think of how far we've come in only a few years. When I was chosen by you to be leader of this party, and then afterwards elected premier by Albertans, our province was in the midst of a tumultuous political storm that threatened Alberta's very economic and social fabric. At that time, the federal NDP Liberal coalition government in Ottawa, led by then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and his friend, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, they were doing everything they possibly could to choke off and ultimately destroy our province's energy and agricultural sectors. Think about that. Literally the first and second largest parts of our economy were under attack by our very own federal government. They were attempting to take control of multiple areas of provincial jurisdiction: energy, health, education, childcare, you name it. They wanted control over all of it. They even went so far as to impose their net zero power regulations on us that threatened the very integrity of the electricity grid that Albertans rely on to keep our families safe and warm on cold Alberta nights. They placed a production cap on our most valuable strategic asset, the Alberta oil sands, and along with it, an effective moratorium on the pipelines and oil tankers needed to take that oil to markets around the world. It seemed as though the entire world was against us. Those were indeed dark, dark times. Those are times Albertans will not soon forget in our collective memories. But in those difficult circumstances, Albertans came together, as we always do. Together, we raised our voices and worked relentlessly to fight and to find a way to overcome this threat. And amazingly, we began winning those fights. We fought and won in the courts of law. We fought and won in the court of public opinion. And we fought against and continue to fight every person or initiative that seeks to destroy our economy and future prosperity. And look at the results. Together we have stopped and driven back the extreme anti-energy movement in our country. We have helped to turn the tide of national public opinion from being anti-oil and gas into a country-wide consensus that Alberta's energy resources are a national treasure that can and must be developed. Those who had opposed us, including the former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his governing partner, the former federal NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, along with so many others who sought Alberta's economic demise, they've seen their political careers come to an abrupt and dramatic end. Including, I would add, former Trudeau Environment Minister, Stephen Guilbeault. He, of course, resigned from cabinet on Thursday after the announcement of the new energy deal that repealed several of the anti-Alberta laws that he created. On behalf of all Albertans, Monsieur Guilbeault, we bid you adieu. And that's right, just 48 hours ago, I had the opportunity to sign a monumental energy agreement for our province with Ottawa that will enable Alberta to double our oil production by 2035, build millions of barrels of new pipeline capacity, and unlock billions of investment in AI data centers powered by clean Alberta natural gas. And this complete turnaround of Canadian policy direction and public opinion was unthinkable just a few short years ago. No one thought it was possible. No one except right here in Alberta, where we know that all things are indeed possible. Now, Alberta is winning, and we will continue to win this battle for our freedom and provincial rights because we are on the right side of history, and Albertans will not be denied our right to a prosperous future. Now, I know full well that so many of you here today have been justifiably, like me, frustrated and angry with Ottawa. I get it, trust me, I get it, I hear you. We have been abused and taken for granted repeatedly over the past decades. But my friends, let's not throw in the towel and give up on our country just as the battle has turned in our favor and victory is in sight. It is. It is. Not when our fellow Canadians, even those that may support differing political parties, are nonetheless supporting Alberta's vision for a prosperous, energy-rich nation with strong and sovereign provinces, building a Canada we can be proud of again. Now is not the time to give up the fight. Now is the time to double down and fight for both our province and our country, because we Albertans are indeed the proudest of Canadians, and we don't fight for the sake of fighting. We don't look for conflict when there is an opportunity for freedom and peace and prosperity with our fellow Canadians. That is all we've ever wanted: freedom and peace and prosperity. Because Albertans are happiest when we are hard at work getting things done, solving problems, serving our communities, creating and innovating. That is when we are truly at our best. We want to lead this country towards a better and brighter future because we take great pride in that as a province. All we need is a government in Ottawa to get out of the way and let us turn Canada into a thriving energy superpower with Alberta leading the way. And this new Alberta-Ottawa energy agreement is a first step in trying to accomplish exactly that. So let's take the win and charge full steam ahead, because this agreement means the end of the punitive oil and gas emissions cap, so our great energy producers can grow and thrive again. This agreement, yes. This agreement means the immediate suspension of the federal net zero power regulations in Alberta, which will stabilize our power grid. Yep. Throw open the doors for massive investments into AI data centers. And this agreement includes a clear path to the construction of a 1 million barrel per day bitumen pipeline to Asian markets so that our province and our country are no longer dependent on just one customer to buy our most valuable resource. This agreement also allows for needed exemptions to the oil tanker ban, an overhaul of the No New Pipeline Law, C-69, and ensuring our energy companies are able to advertise their environmental leadership and efforts without fear of penalty. And this agreement also means that Alberta can show the entire world that the solution to our environmental challenges does not entail capping productivity and growth in the oil and gas development. Rather, it is to leverage the profitability of a strong oil and gas sector to invest in the very technologies that will solve the environmental challenges that we face. Now, my friends, I am under no illusions. This agreement is just the first step in this journey. There is much hard work ahead of us, and the federal government must earn back the trust of Albertans as we move through the next stages of this process. After all, the people of Alberta have, of course, had the rug pulled out from under them too many times to count over the past 10 years. So I will take the advice of a great US president, Ronald Reagan, who said when dealing with a former adversary, trust but verify. And on behalf of Albertans, I will be verifying and holding Ottawa accountable, as you know, every step of the way. You can absolutely count on that. But a new relationship and a new beginning needs a starting point, and this agreement, I hope, is that starting point. So I invite each of you today to join me on this journey. Let's lower our fists and instead roll up our sleeves and get to work on making our province and our people more prosperous than ever before. Because we have many other critically important challenges to overcome, especially in dealing with the pressures brought on by our own success. This is not the NDP's Alberta, where people and businesses were fleeing the reckless policies of the socialists that ran roughshod over our province for 4 destructive years. The fact is, from the election of the UCP in 2019 until now, Alberta, despite all of the roadblocks thrown in our way by Ottawa, has still managed to become once again the fastest growing province in Canada, and by a long shot. The Alberta advantage is back, and all of Canada and the world has noticed and wants to be a part of it. And let there be no doubt about how important immigration and interprovincial migration have been to our previous success. New Albertans from other provinces and countries have been essential to our economic prosperity and rich culture for over 100 years. Alberta has had a history of healthy levels of primarily economic immigrants able to easily integrate into Alberta's economy and culture. But that was upended by the last 10 years of what was effectively an open borders policy by Ottawa. And Albertans of all ages, ethnicities, and immigration history have had quite enough. We need an immigration policy that puts Albertans first. And that is why our government will be taking primary control over our immigration system in the coming months and years ahead. Using our constitutionally protected provincial rights, Alberta will return to a more stable number of primarily economic migrants so that newcomers come here to work and contribute as they have historically done, while Canadian citizens living in Alberta are given first priority to the jobs and the opportunities our economy creates. We will restore the proper balance and ensure that our immigration system becomes a strength to our province again. And although right-sizing Alberta's growth rate is critical, our province cannot afford to delay on making the investments in education and health and other infrastructure needed to catch up with the growth that's already occurred. That's why our government is investing $8.6 billion to open up thousands of new school spaces across the province over the coming years. That's why we will be hiring 3,000 new teachers over the next 3 years, along with at least 1,500 more education assistants. And importantly, we are going to tackle head-on the issue of complexity in our classrooms. We cannot compromise the education of all students because there are too many kids in a classroom that need specialized assistance and care. That doesn't help the students with special needs, and it creates an impossible situation for students and teachers. Students with special needs require unique care and attention that is often not possible in the regular classroom. So it's time to do what's right for our children rather than what's politically correct. Yeah. And this is why our government, led by one of our best and most effective ministers, Dimitrios Nicolaides, He's taken a hands-on approach to ensuring the new teachers and EAs we are hiring are placed where they are needed most, whether that be in regular classrooms or special classrooms suited for children with complex needs. And because I see the NDP and their union allies are now organizing against parental choice in education, let me be very clear, our government will continue to support and protect all options parents enjoy in the education system. That includes public and Catholic and charter and independent and homeschooling, because unlike the NDP and their allies, we in the UCP know and believe that parental choice in education is of paramount importance, and that is not going to change so long as the UCP is in government. And just as we are taking action to strengthen and protect our education system, our government is accelerating desperately needed healthcare reforms. For far too long, politicians across the country have neglected the growing crisis in our provincial public health systems. Canada's healthcare systems, quite frankly, are broken. They are administered by bloated and bureaucratic monstrosities that are often concerned more with centralizing power and control and money rather than with empowering frontline staff and healing patients. Our country has one of the most ineffective health systems in the industrial world. It is a national embarrassment with tragic and life-shortening consequences. We have well-trained and compassionate doctors, nurses, and other frontline staff, but we are having a terrible time keeping them in Canada due to subpar working conditions, rationed operating room time, and better opportunities in other nations. And no matter how much money this country and its provinces spend, the results have not materially improved. In fact, it has been deteriorating in every single province, whether governed by Liberals or New Democrats or Conservatives. And this is why our UCP government decided 3 years ago that we would not stand by any longer and throw billions more tax dollars into the black hole of AHS bureaucracy. We acted decisively to reform our healthcare system, and we are now starting to see improvements each and every day. Wait times for surgical services are coming down. The number of doctors and nurses is increasing. Less is being spent on bureaucracy and more is being spent on the front lines. However, much more needs to be done. And with the transfer of authority over the administration of our healthcare system from AHS to 4 targeted health agencies overseen directly by a dedicated and accountable government ministry, Alberta is now well positioned to accelerate desperately needed health reforms even further. So led by Minister Rick Wilson, the Minister of Mental Health and Addiction, we are well down the path of implementing the world-renowned Alberta recovery model for addiction. We'll soon commence operations on the Compassionate Intervention Program that will mandate treatment in secure facilities for addicts who are a danger to themselves and others. The Alberta model has already saved thousands, and Compassionate Intervention will save thousands more. The Ministry of Assisted Living and Social Services, led by Minister Jason Nixon, doing remarkable work, leading a new effort to transfer hundreds of non-acute patients out of the hospital. These are primarily seniors and homeless individuals who've been left to live their lives in a hospital bed, and we are moving them into accommodations far better suited to their care and quality of life. This will not only result in improved care, but it will also free up hundreds of acute hospital beds for the Albertans who need them. We are also taking bold action under the leadership of Primary and Preventative Care Minister Adriana LaGrange by empowering Albertans to access private diagnostic testing and screening services as they so choose. No longer will Albertans require a doctor to give them permission to access private preventative tests or screening. We want you, yes. We want you and your employers to invest directly in your own preventative health. And if that testing turns up a serious condition that needs treatment, the government will reimburse you for that cost because it likely means that your needed treatment will be less complicated and less costly for taxpayers because it was caught early. And obviously, all referrals from your doctor for testing and screening will remain fully paid for by your Alberta Health Insurance. And as I'm sure many of you heard this past week, under the excellent leadership of the Minister of Hospital and Surgical Services, Matt Jones, our government has introduced dual practice legislation that permits doctors to provide private elective surgeries, such as hip and knee and eye surgeries, after regular business hours and on weekends, so long as they continue to provide their regular amount of public surgeries as well. Yeah. This dual practice arrangement for doctors has worked to reduce wait lists and attract surgeons and health investment in virtually every high-performing health system in the world. And of course, as previously announced, we will be moving from a wasteful and inefficient block funding model for our public hospitals, managed by bureaucrats, into a more competitive and responsive activity-based funding model that pays public hospitals and private surgical centers for the services they actually provide. My friends, the days of an antiquated, bureaucratic, and unaccountable health system are over. Albertans want more choice and better results from their healthcare system, and it's time to bring that system out of the 1960s NDP model and into 2025, where the rest of the world's developed nations already are. And speaking of moving away from socialist NDP policies, let's talk about freedom and justice. We all know that woke ideological policies, such as the safe supply of drugs or soft on crime bail and sentencing rules, state-sponsored social engineering of children, and institutionalized censorship of speech are just a few examples of terrible NDP policies that have needlessly destroyed the lives of thousands in communities all across Canada. Albertans have had quite enough of watching this train wreck of left-wing ideas in action, and our government has stood firmly against these dangerous and destructive policies when few other governments in the Western world would. Although I'm pleased to say that is changing a little bit more and more each day. And despite the continued hysterics of the NDP and their woke activists, Alberta will continue to march boldly forward with policies that promote freedom, save lives, and make our communities safe. This government will fund, not defund, the police. We will seek justice for victims, not excuses for the guilty. We will replace enabling continued drug use for the addicted with providing treatment and a means to recovery. We will lift up and support those struggling with mental health rather than giving them the means to end their lives because of it. And while governments around the world seek to institutionalize the censorship of free speech, our government will forge an accelerated path in the opposite direction. That's why last week our government, inspired by the attack on Dr. Jordan Peterson, as well as so many other doctors and lawyers and nurses and teachers and others, introduced legislation containing comprehensive free speech protection so that no professional will lose their license to practice due to their political beliefs or for not kowtowing to DEI and other destructive mandates. Thanks, guys. That came from you. That was your policy you passed last AGM. We're calling it the Peterson Law, but we aren't stopping there. I'm announcing today that next week, our UCP government will be introducing a new motion under the Alberta Sovereignty Within a United Canada Act that will if passed in the legislature, instruct all provincial entities, including our municipalities and law enforcement agencies, to refuse to enforce or prosecute under the federal gun seizure program. Now, the Sovereignty Act motion will also make it clear that these agencies will not enforce or prosecute Albertans defending their homes and families from intruders. I got a little tip for low-life criminals out there. If you don't want to get shot, don't break into someone's house. It's really that simple, isn't it? It really is. We want our great men and women in law enforcement and our justice system to spend their precious time and effort going after criminals, not farmers, not ranchers or sport shooters, nor Albertans defending their families and their homes. Imagine that, right? And speaking of taking a stand, how about taking a stand for our children? Yeah. As Premier, I want to assure every parent and grandparent here today that under no circumstances will we back down from defending Alberta's children. And that means banning graphic sexual images from our school libraries, full stop. And it also means using the Charter's notwithstanding clause to protect our children by restricting puberty blockers for minors and prohibiting gender reassignment surgery until the child reaches adulthood. Of course, we will also protect women and girls in sports so they aren't forced to compete with those who were born male. Yeah. And we will make sure that parents are notified and included in the decision to change their child's name or pronouns at school. Because parents are the primary caregivers and protectors of their children, and that is how it has been and will continue to be under a UCP government. Now, our UCP MLAs and I will never back down from protecting children or strengthening the rights and freedoms that have made our province the shining city on a hill that it is today, and we will never apologize for it. Now, you know, earlier this month, we changed the motto on our provincial license plate to Alberta, strong and free. Yeah. And predictably, some on the left and in the NDP think that's too American or too aggressive or too whatever. But I disagree. Not only is strong and free our provincial motto, it is also part of our national anthem. And quite frankly, there is no better description for our province and our people. We are a strong and free people. It is that strength and freedom Alberta's First Peoples used to survive and flourish through impossibly harsh winters and landscapes. It is that strength and freedom that allowed the first settlers to turn wilderness into a vast and fertile agricultural marvel. It is that strength and freedom that forged an entrepreneurial drive so strong that it unlocked immeasurable oil wealth from the isolated sands of northern Alberta. It is that strength and freedom that inspired leaders from Lougheed to Klein and from Manning to Harper, who have fought to preserve our freedom and independence from Ottawa as a self-governing people. It is that strength and freedom that gave our young men and women the unthinkable amount of courage needed to sacrifice their very lives in the defense of our nation. And my friends, it is that strength and freedom that empowers and emboldens us today to protect our families, to lead this country, to find a path to prosperity for our children and grandchildren, no matter the barrier or the cost. Alberta was born strong and free. Alberta is still strong and free. And together, my friends, we will ensure that Alberta remains forever strong and free. Thank you.
We have been taking you live to Edmonton, to the Edmonton Expo Convention Center, where on your screen you've been listening to Danielle Smith deliver her keynote speech to the United Conservative Party and the membership that is there. She said more than 4,000 people came in to watch that. Now, if you're just joining us here on CBC News Network, welcome. My name is Natasha Fatah. This is a big news event of the day, and we wouldn't normally take a speech like that live in its entirety, but this has been a major political week for the Premier. You'll notice, of course, that it's coming on the heels of her signing a major agreement, a memorandum of understanding with the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, one that could lead to the construction of a pipeline that would go all the way to the West Coast. That has been met with applause, some skepticism, and also some condemnation. She addressed some of those concerns, but that speech was lengthy and it encompassed quite a bit. Not only what she's been able to do, she says, with this federal government, but also what her party has been able to do within the province in the last 4 years. Some of that needs analysis, some of it needs a reality check. So let's do that with our next guest, Duane Bratt. He's a political science professor at Mount Royal University, and he's been patiently hanging on with us for the past couple of hours, waiting for the speech to come to a conclusion. Mr. Bratt, thank you so much for making time for us today.
You're welcome.
Let me begin by just a general question for you, because so much was covered in the body of that keynote address. What were the big takeaway things for you? What stood out for you the most?
It was a reciting of all of the initiatives that the Smith government has taken, whether that was the use of the notwithstanding clause, whether that was dealing with the teachers, the reforming of the healthcare system. But I think some of the stuff is she defended the MOU she signed with Mark Carney. And although she talked about Justin Trudeau and Stephen Guilbeault by name, she never mentioned Mark Carney by name, never talked about any of the compromises that Alberta made in exchange for this, such as increasing the industrial carbon tax and making a better commitment to carbon capture and storage. So it was an edited selection of what that agreement was. And I think that was in response to yesterday, where in at least 2 occasions she was booed for that MOU. So her pivot was really, and you would expect any speech of any party leader at a party convention to be very partisan. And obviously this was very partisan, but it really was, they're going to keep fighting Ottawa. They're still going to fight the NDP. Wokeism, whatever that is, and a lot of American references. Ronald Reagan was cited numerous times in there.
I know that stood out for me too, the Ronald Reagan thing, considering what's happened with the use of Ronald Reagan.
Multiple times.
Yes.
And sometimes she acknowledged that Reagan said it, other times they didn't. But this does need a fact check. And when she was going on about immigration and asserting Alberta's constitutional authority, immigration is actually co-jurisdiction dominated by the federal government.
Yes.
And so this has been one of the issues surrounding her Alberta Next panel about whether they could deny social services to immigrants. There was also the issue about not enforcing gun laws. I think that is highly problematic, particularly the stand your ground legislation. So, I think this needed a bit of fact checking as well. And she was going on about the motto. What was interesting, because they've changed the license plates to strong and free, everyone acknowledges that's the provincial motto and that's in the national anthem, but it's also the motto of the United Conservative Party. It was not on stage today, but it was on stage yesterday, strong and free. So when she says, well, the woke people are upset by this, well, no, it's because it was a partisan slogan. And that's just an illustration of the speech that she delivered.
So much to unpack there, Professor. Let me get back to some of the stuff you addressed earlier, which is right off the bat, one can make a choice about the sort of tone you bring forward in a keynote address. And she set the tone fairly early. I mean, the opening sentences were about battling leftists, the mainstream media, and other anti-Alberta forces. As you mentioned, she referenced by attacking Justin Trudeau, the former prime minister, and the former leader of the NDP, Jagmeet Singh. She took a shot at Minister Guilbeault, who is no longer a minister within this federal caucus. I mean, is this low-hanging fruit? Is this just a way to get people excited?
Oh, yeah. And the audience just ate it up. And particularly when she talked about the greater privatization of the healthcare system, which she is going on about, saying it is to replace the NDP healthcare system from the 1960s. I think that's a reference to Tommy Douglas in Saskatchewan beginning Medicare in Saskatchewan. But in the 2023 election campaign, Danielle Smith made a big deal about signing the public health guarantee. And now it's about privatizing lab services, privatizing doctors, privatizing surgical facilities. This may be incredibly popular to the people in that room. It's not so popular to the people in Alberta outside of that room.
Okay. I think you sort of answered the next question I was about to ask you. So let's move on to something else, which is, of course, a key reason why we took the speech in its entirety, because of that memorandum of understanding that she signed with the Prime Minister. Now, here's how she referenced that agreement. She says it will allow and enable Alberta to double our oil production by 2035, build millions of barrels of new pipeline capacity, and unlock billions of investment in AI data centers powered by clean Alberta natural gas. She says this is a complete turnaround of Canadian policy direction. So, give me a fact check on that. Is this...
She is correct that
Okay.
This is a transformation in federal government policy. There is no doubt about that.
Right.
But what has happened is that they have given Alberta, and more particularly the oil industry, an opportunity to build this pipeline. There is no guarantee that this will be done. There is still great opposition amongst Indigenous people along the route, along the BC coast. And under Section 35 of the Constitution, they need to do proper consultation. There is a duty to consult. They also need to make sure that there is a business case for this, before they submit billions of dollars of investment. So what Carney has done is essentially get the federal government out of the way by either relaxing or removing a number of pieces of legislation and pieces of regulation. But it's going to be up to the private sector. She was speaking as if this was automatic, if this was a guarantee. There is no guarantee here. But if it doesn't happen, what Carney has done is say, you can't blame the feds on this. This is up to the private sector.
Okay, let me ask you, because you also mentioned that she did not mention by name Prime Minister Mark Carney. There was another name interestingly absent in her speech. So towards the end, she referenced well-known conservative leaders throughout the country, throughout Alberta. Here it is. She says, inspired by leaders from Lockheed to Klein, from Manning to Harper, who have fought to preserve the freedom and independence from Ottawa as a self-governing people in Alberta. She did not mention Pierre Poilievre, the current leader of the Federal Conservative Party, who has also often presented himself as an Albertan. So I wonder, what are we to make of this distancing from the Conservative Party?
Well, because Pierre Poilievre has been distancing himself from Danielle Smith. Poilievre has been over the top in his criticism of this MOU, saying it's a nothing burger, it's a public relations stunt. Well, and Poilievre thinks he's criticizing Carney. He's actually criticizing Carney and Danielle Smith, basically saying Danielle Smith got suckered by Carney, the oil sector got suckered by Carney, all the conservatives in Alberta got suckered by Carney. I can't imagine that is playing very well amongst provincial conservatives. So there is a rift in the conservative movement between Alberta and the federal conservatives. And I would be interested. I know there were several federal conservative MPs at her press conference on Thursday. I wonder how many were in the room today. And unfortunately, they're now having to choose between Poilievre and Smith. So I don't think that was an accident that he was not mentioned.
political science professor Dwayne Bratt. Thank you so much for your time, your analysis, and those reality checks. Really helpful. Thank you, sir.
Okay, you're welcome.
Take care. Okay, let's go to our buddy CBC Sam Sampson, who's joining us from inside the convention center where the event we were taking live was taking place. So Sam, good to see you. We waited a long time for Premier Smith to finally make that presentation. And she did say that she was going to mention that pipeline agreement, of course, that was announced on Thursday, that it marks a fresh new chapter in the relationship between the province and the federal government. We heard it again, Sam, you and I heard it last night. We heard it again. The crowd isn't necessarily lockstep with the Premier. Talk to me about what you heard while you were there.
Yes, well, first of all, we have to acknowledge the wait if people are following along and they were waiting for that speech. It wasn't because of the Premier's timing or anything. There were quite a few people in line because there was a bit of a security lineup for people to get through. So they waited for the majority of people to get through so that they could actually hear the Premier. And you're right, she is selling it as she has for days now, ever since the Memorandum of Understanding was signed, that this is a fresh chapter for Alberta. It's a hard-fought battle that has now been won. And in part, she's framing that because for years, so many people here in this room and other Conservatives in Alberta have felt that the Liberal Ottawa government has held Alberta back from its full potential, especially when it comes to environmental policies and in terms of really reaching those oil and natural gas, those dreams. And so take a listen about how she framed that even further, especially in front of her own party.
Now, I know full well that so many of you here today have been justifiably, like me, frustrated and angry with Ottawa. I get it. I get it. Trust me. I get it. I hear you. We have been abused and taken for granted repeatedly over the past decades. But my friends, let's not throw in the towel and give up on our country just as the battle has turned in our favor and victory is in sight. It is. It is. Not when our fellow Canadians, even those that may support differing political parties, are nonetheless supporting Alberta's vision for a prosperous, energy-rich nation with strong and sovereign provinces, building a Canada we can be proud of again. Now is not the time to give up the fight.
Clearly mixed reaction there, and it's because it is a diverse crowd in terms of opinion on this specific instance. So some people, yes, of course they agree with the Premier saying that this is a good deal for Alberta. Others say that it's not a good deal because the Liberal government, they say, will just string Alberta along and nothing will ever happen in terms of a timeline for a new bitumen pipeline specifically. And then there are others who disagree with the deal because they'd rather not work with Ottawa at all. In fact, they would rather see Alberta separate, become its own country, and find other energy infrastructure opportunities, specifically with the United States. Keep in mind, though, this room does not necessarily reflect the general Alberta population. This is a very specific group of card-carrying United Conservative Party members, and the majority of Albertans, according to recent polling, would like to stay within Canada.
Okay, well, sticking with the crowd that she was just speaking to, when you get a mixed reaction like that, how is the Premier selling this deal?
She's saying she's going to be strong, she's going to support Alberta, and she's going to hold Ottawa accountable. Take a listen.
I am under no illusions. This agreement is just the first step in this journey. There is much hard work ahead of us, and the federal government must earn back the trust of Albertans as we move through the next stages of this process. After all, the people of Alberta have, of course, had the rug pulled out from under them too many times to count over the past 10 years. So I will take the advice of a great US President, Ronald Reagan, who said when dealing with a former adversary, trust but verify. And on behalf of Albertans, I will be verifying and holding Ottawa accountable, as you know, every step of the way. You can absolutely count on that.
No mixed reaction there. People are supportive of that idea. Now, before she left the stage, the Premier said many other things and brought up other topics that are important to her government and her party, including adding new, maybe privatized aspects to Alberta's healthcare system, being tough on crime in general, and fighting against the federal government's gun seizure program, all of which, again, received unanimous applause. So no mixed reaction there for those topics.
CBC's Sam Sampson in Edmonton. Thank you, Sam. Okay, let's stay on this story and let's stay within the convention center. For that, we turn to Graham Thompson, who's a political columnist joining us now. And Graham, thank you so much for your patience, my friend. I know you've been hanging around for a while. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Graham, let me ask you, so you're in the space, you've heard the speech from the leader of the UCP. I'm going to ask you a two-pronged question. First, what did you think of her speech, and how did the crowd react to it?
Yeah, well, the thing is, it's a typical speech from her. It's very much, attack Ottawa, even though she begins by talking about this MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding to get that pipeline built. But it's still very much, hey, we don't trust Ottawa, and we're going to keep on fighting. So that was her walking this tightrope between actually working with Ottawa and then realizing the people in this audience don't agree with her. Many of them don't agree with her. And both Sam's mentioned this and Dwayne mentioned it. The people in this hall are not a cross-section of Albertans. They're not even a cross-section, I would say, of Conservatives. This is a special branch. We call them like a fringe element of the Conservative movement. So when she was talking about issues, social conservative issues like there'll be no more, she called it social engineering of children, big applause, tough on crime, big applause, restricting government services for certain immigrants, big applause. So it's a very typical speech. And as for the reaction, it's like what she got last year, sticking with social conservative issues, big applause. But the one issue that's divided people here is this the pipeline idea. And as Sam mentioned, people here don't like it either because they're thinking, we're giving too much to Ottawa, bending the knee to Ottawa, or they're thinking that this is not going to actually work. And there's a lot of hurdles for Alberta to actually jump before it could actually get built. And of course, another issue is who's going to build it. No one has come forward. There's no private company has offered to actually build this. So when it comes to the traditional speaking points, big applause on this issue of the pipeline, that has actually divided this party.
Let's stick with that then. If she's speaking to her constituency, the UCP, so is her messaging getting the same sort of reaction amongst a broader base of Albertans? I'm just trying to understand if this sense of distrust with Ottawa permeates throughout the province, if this desire to separate from Canada. I mean, how seriously is one meant to take these concerns?
Right. Now, polls have shown, 65% of Albertans don't want to separate. There was that petition drive, got over 400,000 people signing saying they don't want to separate. So the majority of Albertans do not want to separate. But as I say, people here in this room, they don't reflect that. This is people who want to separate very overtly. So what she is still trying to do, though, is say, look, trust but verify. I was quoting Ronald Reagan saying, hey, listen, I hear you. You're skeptical. I'm going to be working and keep on pushing against Ottawa. So just trying to work that balance, that there's still this issue. Will anything get done? And this is a big issue for her in the months and maybe years to come. Election's still 2 years away, according to the schedule. And people will be watching, is anything getting done? As for people actually supporting this, most Albertans want Alberta to stand up to Ottawa. Not separatists. They want to stand up to Ottawa. And many of them do want to see another pipeline. The question is, will this deal get done? And the skeptics are right here in this room.
Okay. I do want to address another major issue that's taken place in Alberta just this week for the Premier, but perhaps didn't get enough national coverage. And that's this issue of the voter recalls for 14 MLAs. Graham, do me a favor, just if you could quickly summarize for the audience who's not been following Alberta politics that closely, what exactly is taking place here?
Okay, so there was recall legislation brought in by Jason Kenney, the previous UCP Premier. What it says basically, if you don't like your UCP, you can make an application with Elections Alberta in 100 words or less, explain why you don't want this MLA to be an MLA, you want to recall them. And what's happened, if you do that, then if it's approved by Elections Alberta, then there's an actual a recall petition to get 90 days to collect 60% of the number of people who voted in the last election in that riding. If they get that 60% and it's approved by Elections Alberta, then there's actually a recall vote. And 50% plus one, if they vote to recall the MLA, that MLA is kicked out of the job and there'll be a by-election. So what's happened here, people have brought recall petitions against 14 MLAs, many of them cabinet ministers. And this is a problem for the government because some of those ridings are in Calgary and the MLAs did not win by much. In fact, Rajan Sawhney in Calgary Northwest won by about 140 votes, and she's on that petition recall list. So this is a problem for Smith. And I talked to her a couple of days about this, and she is looking at changing the law. And that's the feeling we're getting now from Smith. If she lets this run its course, 14 recall petitions, she might lose some of those MLAs. That'd be a major embarrassment for her, but also to undermine her leadership. If they recall the Recall Act, basically, and scrap it, they're going to have to do that retroactively to stop all the petitions going ahead that have already started. So it's a major problem for her. But what we think, based on what she's telling us, they're going to be in the next few days, Tuesday or Wednesday next week, actually scrapping that law because she is saying, look, they're just trying to undermine my government. They're trying to undermine duly elected MLAs. And so that's the reason she's going to give to actually scrap this law.
Okay, so we'll continue to watch for that. And thank you for that explanation, Graham. You mentioned that you've met with the Premier. You had your sit-down end of your interview with her. What was that like? What were the key takeaways for you from that conversation with her?
Well, I'll be writing a column for the Toronto Star, so you can read that in the coming weeks. But it came down to this issue. She really is proud of this deal. So the MOU, the pipeline deal, of course, she announced it on Thursday with the Prime Minister. Then she had her sit-down year-end interviews because that was sort of the key issue here for her is this pipeline deal. Because she is saying, look, yesterday Ottawa was fighting us, and today we're actually working together. So she is really proud of that. She thinks this is a great deal. And the problem is, again, the public reaction to this, and specifically the reaction here. So the year-end interview dealt with a lot of issues. I say I've written a column about that, or writing a column about that. You can read it in the Toronto Star. But as for the big issue, it's all about pipelines right now, and her trying to reset the relationship with Ottawa. She thinks it's a good idea, but today she had to say to her audience, hey, you're skeptical. I'm a bit skeptical too. We'll keep on pushing Ottawa. Our fight with Ottawa is far from over.
Graham Thompson joining us from the Convention Centre in Edmonton. Thank you so much for your time today, Graham.
It's been my pleasure.
Take care.